It was always humanity's dream and purpose to be confronted by the misery of meanings that were challenging to understand. The truths that were fondly there were as open as the sunlight that shone brightly on a summer day, yet they remained elusive, slipping through the grasp of those who sought them. Of all these enigmatic concepts, none was more profound than love, a force both mesmerizing and untouchable, adorned with symbolic gestures, each carefully chosen to reflect the unspoken desires of the beloved. Flowers of various hues, poetry woven with longing, soft whispers carried on trembling lips, all mere shadows of love itself. And yet, despite these tributes, love remained beyond the reach of full comprehension for those who dared to explore its depths. How can we ever truly understand and unravel the deeper meaning of something both profoundly touching and elusive? Love, in its rawest form, is an unfathomable phenomenon. It arises from an abyss we cannot perceive, a force that beckons us to taste its overwhelming presence, only to leave an unsettling imprint upon the lips that yearn for it. To understand love is to attempt to decipher a code encrypted within the very fabric of existence. It is to reach into the unknown, feeling its pulse in the quiet moments of solitude and the fevered embraces of passion. Yet no matter how close we come to grasping it, it remains just out of reach, a whisper against the ear that dissolves before it can be understood. To love is to feel, and to feel is to be consumed by an experience so overwhelming that it leaves no room for certainty. To understand love is to lose oneself within it, to drown in its depths without the hope of ever surfacing unchanged. It is a force that tears open the soul, exposing it to the cruel vulnerability of existence. And in its simplest gestures, a glance, a touch, a lingering silence, love etches itself onto the mind, forcing one to grapple with an understanding that is always incomplete. It is a language without a key, story written in letters we cannot read. With that said, the lover walked, feeling the cold breath of the seasons striking his face. He pondered what was lost, what had been so deeply adored, yet had also become a burden. Was it the weight of love that had lifted, or was it merely the realization that he had never held it at all? The very essence of love manifested in every mind it ensnared, weaving its control beyond resistance. It did not ask for permission, it simply was. To live within its grasp was to navigate meaning without substance, to surrender to a fate that offered no explanations. That was how we lived, chasing after something intangible, believing in its presence even as it dissolved between our fingers. Realistically speaking, to be human is to bear a resemblance to a kind of survival instinct that feeds upon both yearning and loss. We draw energy from the very thing that consumes us, dissolving within the desires that shape the content of our souls. It is a paradox, one that defines our existence. The purity of the soul bound to flesh and subject to its endless needs will always seek ways to break free. It will become rogue when the pathways to explore are open, readily available, and too tempting to resist. This is the great contradiction of our nature. We yearn for purity, yet we are drawn toward corruption. We long for love, yet we are terrified of its cost. It is an unfortunate phenomenon that we are such creatures, for even the noblest of emotions can be twisted by the darker inclinations of our thoughts and actions. Love, which should exist in its purest form, becomes tainted by self-interest, by fear, by the limitations of the human heart. We mold it into something we can control, something that fits within the fragile constructs of our understanding. And in doing so, we strip it of its essence, leaving only an imitation, a promise of nothingness wrapped in the illusion of fulfillment. Now, what does evil itself have to do with something that is supposed to be inherently pure and innocent, you may ask? The answer is paradoxical. Love, as an idea, remains untouched by corruption. It is perfect in its existence, a truth beyond human interference. But the people who wield love, who claim to give and receive it, are flawed. They are creatures smeared with the ways of self-indulgence, drawn to challenges that offer no reward, willing to surrender themselves to the pursuit of something that may never have been real. Love in their hands becomes a reflection of their own imperfections. This is the tragedy of love's fate. It will always be the purest of ideas, but tainted in its substance. It will exist in whispers, in fleeting moments, in the spaces between words where meaning is felt but never spoken. It will be both the greatest joy and the deepest sorrow, a force that shapes the lives of those who dare to believe in it, even as it remains forever beyond their grasp. And so humanity continues its endless pursuit, reaching for love as if it were a star that could be plucked from the sky. But stars are not meant to be held. They are meant to be admired from a distance, their light shining upon those who dare to dream, but never to possess. And perhaps that is the true essence of love, not to own it, not to fully understand it, but simply to stand in its glow, embracing the mystery that will never be unraveled.